Chapter 6. After talking for some time with the Esaul about next day's attack, which now, seeing how near they were to the French, he seemed to have definitely decided on, Denísov turned his horse and rode back. "Now, my lad, we'll go and get DWI," he said to Pétya. As they approached the watch-house, Denísov stopped, peering into the forest. Among the trees a man with long legs and long, swinging arms, wearing a short jacket, bast shoes, and a Kazan hat, was approaching with long, light steps. He had a musketoon over his shoulder and an axe stuck in his girdle. When he espied Denísov, he hastily threw something into the bushes, removed his sodden hat by its floppy brim, and approached his commander. It was Tikhon. His wrinkled and pockmarked face and narrow little eyes beamed with self-satisfied merriment. He lifted his head high and gazed at Denísov as if repressing a laugh. "Well, where did you disappear to?" inquired Denísov. "Where did I disappear to? I went to get Frenchmen," answered Tikhon boldly and hurriedly, in a husky but melodious bass voice. "Why did you push yourself in there by daylight? You ass! Well, why haven't you taken one?" "Oh, I took one all right," said Tikhon. "Where is he?" "You see, I took him first thing at dawn," Tikhon continued, spreading out his flat feet with outturned toes in their bast shoes. "I took him into the forest. Then I see he's no good and think I'll go and fetch a likelier one. You see." "What a wogue, it's just as I thought," said Denísov to the Esaul. "Why didn't you bring that one? What was the good of bringing him?" Tikhon interrupted hastily and angrily, "That one wouldn't have done for you. As if I don't know what sort you want. What a brute you are." "Well, I went for another one," Tikhon continued, "and I crept like this through the wood and lay down." He suddenly lay down on his stomach with a supple movement to show how he had done it. "One turned up and I grabbed him, like this. He jumped up quickly and lightly. 'Come along to the colonel,' I said. He starts yelling, and suddenly there were 4 of them. They rushed at me with their little swords. So I went for them with my axe, this way. 'What are you up to?' says I. 'Christ be with you,' shouted Tikhon, waving his arms with an angry scowl and throwing out his chest. 'Yes, we saw from the hill how you took to your heels through the puddles,' said the Esaul, screwing up his glittering eyes. Pétya badly wanted to laugh, but noticed that they all refrained from laughing. He turned his eyes rapidly from Tikhon's face to the Esaul's and Denísov's, unable to make out what it all meant. "Don't play the fool," said Denísov, coughing angrily. "Why didn't you bring the first one?" Tikhon scratched his back with one hand and his head with the other, then suddenly his whole face expanded into a beaming, foolish grin, disclosing a gap where he had lost a tooth. That was why he was called Sherbety, the gap-toothed. Denísov smiled, and Pétya burst into a peal of merry laughter in which Tikhon himself joined. "Oh, but he was a regular good-for-nothing," said Tikhon. "The clothes on him, poor stuff. How could I bring him? And so rude, your honor. Why, he says, 'I'm a general's son myself, I won't go,' he says." "You are a brute," said Denísov. "I wanted to question." "But I questioned him," said Tikhon. "He said he didn't know much. 'There are a lot of us,' he says, 'but all poor stuff, only soldiers in name,' he says. 'Shout loud at them,' he says, 'and you'll take them all,'" Tikhon concluded, looking cheerfully and resolutely into Denísov's eyes. "I'll give you 100 sharp lashes, that'll teach you to play the fool," said Denísov severely. "But why are you angry?" remonstrated Tikhon, "just as if I'd never seen your Frenchmen. Only wait till it gets dark and I'll fetch you any of them you want, 3 if you like." "Well, let's go," said Denísov, and rode all the way to the watch-house in silence and frowning angrily. Tikhon followed behind and Pétya heard the Cossacks laughing with him and at him, about some pair of boots he had thrown into the bushes. When the fit of laughter that had seized him at Tikhon's words and smile had passed and Pétya realized for a moment that this Tikhon had killed a man, he felt uneasy. He looked round at the captive drummer boy and felt a pang in his heart. But this uneasiness lasted only a moment. He felt it necessary to hold his head higher, to brace himself, and to question the Esau with an air of importance about tomorrow's undertaking, that he might not be unworthy of the company in which he found himself. The officer who had been sent to inquire met Denisov on the way with the news that Dólokhov was soon coming and that all was well with him. Denisov at once cheered up and, calling Petya to him, said, "Well, tell me about yourself." Chapter 7. Petya, having left his people after their departure from Moscow, joined his regiment and was soon taken as orderly by a general commanding a large guerrilla detachment. From the time he received his commission, and especially since he had joined the active army and taken part in the Battle of Vyazma, Petya had been in a constant state of blissful excitement at being grown up and in a perpetual ecstatic hurry not to miss any chance to do something really heroic. He was highly delighted with what he saw and experienced in the army, but at the same time it always seemed to him that the really heroic exploits were being performed just where he did not happen to be. And he was always in a hurry to get where he was not. When on the 21st of October his general expressed a wish to send somebody to Denisov's detachment, Petya begged so piteously to be sent that the general could not refuse. But when dispatching him he recalled Petya's mad action at the Battle of Vyazma, where instead of riding by the road to the place to which he had been sent, he had galloped to the advanced line under the fire of the French and had there twice fired his pistol. So now the general explicitly forbade his taking part in any action whatever of Denisov's. That was why Petya had blushed and grown confused when Denisov asked him whether he could stay. Before they had ridden to the outskirts of the forest Petya had considered he must carry out his instructions strictly and return at once. But when he saw the French and saw Tikhon and learned that there would certainly be an attack that night, he decided, with the rapidity with which young people change their views, that the general, whom he had greatly respected till then, was a rubbishy German, that Denisov was a hero, the Esau a hero, and Tikhon a hero too, and that it would be shameful for him to leave them at a moment of difficulty. It was already growing dusk when Denisov, Petya, and the Esau rode up to the watch-house. In the twilight saddled horses could be seen, and Cossacks and Hussars who had rigged up rough shelters in the glade and were kindling glowing fires in a hollow of the forest where the French could not see the smoke. In the passage of the small watch-house a Cossack with sleeves rolled up was chopping some mutton. In the room 3 officers of Denisov's band were converting a door into a tabletop. Petya took off his wet clothes, gave them to be dried, and at once began helping the officers to fix up the dinner table. In 10 minutes the table was ready and a napkin spread on it. On the table were vodka, a flask of rum, white bread, roast mutton, and salt. Sitting at table with the officers and tearing the fat savory mutton with his hands, down which the grease trickled, Petya was in an ecstatic childish state of love for all men, and consequently of confidence that others loved him in the same way. "So then what do you think, Vasily Dmitrich?" said he to Denisov. "It's all right my staying a day with you?" And not waiting for a reply he answered his own question, "You see I was told to find out, well, I am finding out. Only do let me into the chief. I don't want a reward. But I want." Petya clenched his teeth and looked around, throwing back his head and flourishing his arms. "Into the viewy chief," Denisov repeated with a smile. "Only, please let me command something, so that I may really command," Petya went on. "What would it be to you?" "Oh, you want a knife," he said, turning to an officer who wished to cut himself a piece of mutton. And he handed him his clasp knife. The officer admired it. "Please keep it." "I have several like it," said Petya, blushing. "Heavens! I was quite forgetting," he suddenly cried. "I have some raisins, fine ones, you know, seedless ones. We have a new sutler and he has such capital things. I bought 10 pounds. I am used to something sweet. Would you like some?" And Petya ran out into the passage to his Cossack and brought back some bags which contained about 5 pounds of raisins. "Have some, gentlemen, have some. You want a coffee pot, don't you?" he asked the Esau. "I bought a capital one from our sutler. He has splendid things. And he's very honest, that's the chief thing. I'll be sure to send it to you. Or perhaps your flints are giving out, or are worn out, that happens sometimes, you know. I have brought some with me, here they are," and he showed a bag, 100 flints. I bought them very cheap. Please take as many as you want, or all if you like. Then suddenly, dismayed lest he had said too much, Petya stopped and blushed. He tried to remember whether he had not done anything else that was foolish. And running over the events of the day he remembered the French drummer boy. It's capital for us here, but what of him? Where have they put him? Have they fed him? Haven't they hurt his feelings, he thought. But having caught himself saying too much about the flints, he was now afraid to speak out. I might ask, he thought, but they'll say, he's a boy himself and so he pities the boy. I'll show them tomorrow whether I'm a boy. Will it seem odd if I ask? Petya thought. Well, never mind, and immediately, blushing and looking anxiously at the officers to see if they appeared ironical, he said. May I call in that boy who was taken prisoner and give him something to eat? Perhaps. Yes, he's a poor little fellow, said Denisov, who evidently saw nothing shameful in this reminder. Call him in. His name is Vincent Boss. Have him fetched. I'll call him, said Petya. Yes, yes, call him. A poor little fellow, Denisov repeated. Petya was standing at the door when Denisov said this. He slipped in between the officers, came close to Denisov, and said. Let me kiss you, dear old fellow. Oh, how fine, how splendid. And having kissed Denisov he ran out of the hut. Boss! Vincent! Petya cried, stopping outside the door. Who do you want, sir? Asked a voice in the darkness. Petya replied that he wanted the French lad who had been captured that day. Ah, Vesiny, said a Cossack. Vincent, the boy's name, had already been changed by the Cossacks into Vesiny, vernal, and into Vesinya by the peasants and soldiers. In both these adaptations the reference to spring, Vesna, matched the impression made by the young lad. He is warming himself there by the bonfire. Ho, Vesinya! Vesinya, Vesiny, laughing voices were heard calling to one another in the darkness. He's a smart lad, said an hussar standing near Petya. We gave him something to eat a while ago. He was awfully hungry. The sound of bare feet splashing through the mud was heard in the darkness, and the drummer boy came to the door. Ah, c'est vous, said Petya. Voulez-vous manger? N'ayez pas peur, on allez-vous faire pas de mal, asterisk he added shyly and affectionately, touching the boy's hand. Entrez, entrez. Asterisk, 2. Asterisk, ah, it's you. Do you want something to eat? Don't be afraid, they won't hurt you. Asterisk, 2, come in, come in. Merci, monsieur, asterisk said the drummer boy in a trembling almost childish voice, and he began scraping his dirty feet on the threshold. Asterisk, thank you, sir. There were many things Petya wanted to say to the drummer boy, but did not dare to. He stood irresolutely beside him in the passage. Then in the darkness he took the boy's hand and pressed it. Come in, he repeated in a gentle whisper. Oh, what can I do for him, he thought, and opening the door he let the boy pass in first. When the boy had entered the hut, Petya sat down at a distance from him, considering it beneath his dignity to pay attention to him. But he fingered the money in his pocket and wondered whether it would seem ridiculous to give some to the drummer boy. Chapter 8. The arrival of Dólokhov diverted Petya's attention from the drummer boy, to whom Denisov had had some mutton and vodka given, and whom he had dressed in a Russian coat so that he might be kept with their band and not sent away with the other prisoners. Petya had heard in the army many stories of Dólokhov's extraordinary bravery and of his cruelty to the French, so from the moment he entered the hut Petya did not take his eyes from him, but braced himself up more and more and held his head high, that he might not be unworthy even of such company. Dólokhov's appearance amazed Petya by its simplicity. Denisov wore a Cossack coat, had a beard, had an icon of Nicholas the Wonder-Worker on his breast, and his way of speaking and everything he did indicated his unusual position. But Dólokhov, who in Moscow had worn a Persian costume, had now the appearance of a most correct officer of the guards. He was clean-shaven and wore a guardsman's padded coat with an Order of St. George at his buttonhole and a plain forage cap set straight on his head. He took off his wet felt cloak in a corner of the room, and without greeting anyone went up to Denisov and began questioning him about the matter in hand. Denisov told him of the designs the large detachments had on the transport, of the message Petya had brought, and his own replies to both generals. Then he told him all he knew of the French detachment. "That's so. But we must know what troops they are and their numbers," said Dólokhov. "It will be necessary to go there. We can't start the affair without knowing for certain how many there are. I like to work accurately. Here now, wouldn't one of these gentlemen like to ride over to the French camp with me? I have brought a spare uniform." "I'll go with you," cried Petya. "There's no need for you to go at all," said Denisov, addressing Dólokhov, "and as for him, I won't let him go on any account." "I like that," exclaimed Petya. "Why shouldn't I go?" "Because it's useless." "Well, you must excuse me, because... I shall go, and that's all." "You'll take me, won't you?" he said, turning to Dólokhov. "Why not?" Dólokhov answered absently, scrutinizing the face of the French drummer boy. "Have you had that youngster with you long?" he asked Denisov. "He was taken today, but he knows nothing. I'm keeping him with me." "Yes, and where do you put the others?" inquired Dólokhov. "Where? I send them away and take a receipt for them," shouted Denisov, suddenly flushing. "And I say boldly that I have not a single man's life on my conscience. Would it be difficult for you to send 30 or 300 men to town under escort, instead of staining, I speak bluntly, staining the honor of a soldier? That kind of amiable talk would be suitable from this young Count of 16, said Dólokhov with cold irony, but it's time for you to drop it. Why, I've not said anything. I only say that I'll certainly go with you, said Petya shyly. But for you and me, old fellow, it's time to drop these amenities, continued Dólokhov, as if he found particular pleasure in speaking of this subject which irritated Denisov. Now, why have you kept this lad, he went on, swaying his head. Because you are sorry for him. Don't we know those receipts of yours? You send 100 men away, and 30 get there. The rest either starve or get killed. So isn't it all the same not to send them? The Isal, screwing up his light-colored eyes, nodded approvingly. That's not the point. I'm not going to discuss the matter. I do not wish to take it on my conscience. You say they'll die. All white. Only not by my fault. Dólokhov began laughing. Who has told them not to capture me these 20 times over? But if they did catch me they'd string me up to an aspen tree, and with all your chivalry just the same. He paused. However, we must get to work. Tell the Cossack to fetch my kit. I have 2 French uniforms in it. Well, are you coming with me? He asked Petya. Yes, certainly, cried Petya, blushing almost to tears and glancing at Denisov. While Dólokhov had been disputing with Denisov what should be done with prisoners, Petya had once more felt awkward and restless, but again he had no time to grasp fully what they were talking about. If grown-up, distinguished men think so, it must be necessary and right, thought he. But above all Denisov must not dare to imagine that I'll obey him and that he can order me about. I will certainly go to the French camp with Dólokhov. If he can, so can I. And to all Denisov's persuasions, Petya replied that he too was accustomed to do everything accurately and not just anyhow, and that he never considered personal danger. For you'll admit that if we don't know for sure how many of them there are, hundreds of lives may depend on it, while there are only 2 of us. Besides, I want to go very much and certainly will go, so don't hinder me, said he. It will only make things worse.